You're already married, aren't you? Going back to your parents' house is just too soft. If you go back, don't ever come back to this house again. Kanae yells this as she blocks my path after hearing that my dad got injured and I was planning to go back home. I just nodded silently. Understood. I won't come back, so I'll go home to my parents. My name is Jessie. Louis, my husband, and I have been together since middle school, and we ended up marrying each other. We've only had eyes for each other since our first love. Both our parents were thrilled with how well we got along, and it helped that they were friends since we're from the same hometown. The reason we moved into Louis' family's house after getting married was because they had a spacious home with extra rooms. We got married right after college and had been saving money appropriately for our age. But both sets of parents told us it would be fine to live together until we saved up some more money. So we ended up living in Louis' family home where a room was waiting for us. Both Louis and I were exhausted from adjusting to our new lives when we started our first jobs. We felt grateful that we could live with his family. My in-laws treated me like their own daughter, and there was absolutely no issue in mine and Louis' married life. That is, until Lyra came back home. Lyra is Louis' older sister, 2 years his senior. She had been mean to me ever since I started dating Louis in middle school. She said things like I wasn't good enough for him, or that he had poor taste. Louis always defended me and wondered why Lyra would say such things. Lyra worked for a company that required her to relocate, and she moved to the city shortly after starting her job. One of the reasons I agreed to move into Louis' family home was because Lyra wasn't there. Another reason I agreed to live in Louis' family home was because Lyra wasn't around. If Lyra had still been living there, I would have flat out refused to move in. However, as fate would have it, Lyra was reassigned to our hometown. When I shared my concerns with Louis, he said, "Lyra is an adult now. She won't say anything weird." True, the times Lyra bullied me were back in high school. After she went to college, she rarely came home, and we stopped running into each other even when I visited the family home. At our wedding, although she didn't speak to me, I remember seeing Lyra crying. It made me think maybe we could get along, but that was a big mistake. After returning home, Lyra acted normally toward me in front of Louis and his parents. I thought maybe she had matured and her edginess was gone. But then, one day when I luckily had some time off, I was enjoying a book in my room. Lyra, who also happened to be off that day, walked into my and Louis' room without knocking. "Hey, how long are you gonna laze around? Could you hurry up and make some food? I'm hungry." Lyra wore a look she'd never show in front of Louis or his parents. Taken aback by Lyra's eyes, filled with what seemed like hatred, I put down my book and said, "All right, let's make some food," and headed to the kitchen. Drinking in the middle of the day, Lyra acted as though I should naturally be the one cooking. She'd never acted this way when Louis and his parents were around. Feeling deceived, wondering if she'd been hiding her true self all this time, I quickly made lunch. Lyra took one bite, then stood up with her plate. "There's no way I can eat something this terrible. Jessie, why did you even marry Louis? He really doesn't know how to pick 'em. Poor guy." Glaring at me, Lyra took her plate straight to the trash. She threw away the food I had made right in front of me. "Go buy some alcohol. After eating your awful cooking, it feels like my tongue is rotting. I want to disinfect it with alcohol, so go get some, now." I was pretty steamed, but I had planned on going shopping anyway, so I got her some alcohol. To spite her, I bought non-alcoholic beer. Lyra was furious. I retorted, "Don't treat me like a minion," which escalated into an argument. Still mad, Lyra retreated to her room. When Louis came home, she instantly switched back to her gentle demeanor, a quick change that sent shivers down my spine. That night, I discussed Lyra with Louis, but for some reason, his attitude was cold. Lately, every time he looks at me, his expression is complicated. We used to always share the double bed, but now he's sometimes sleeping on the living room couch. When I asked why, he said, "Just couldn't sleep, so I stayed in the living room." I've been wondering what's going on ever since. I was saddened by his sudden coldness. When Louis said, Instead of blaming Lyra, don't you think you have some things to reflect on yourself? I couldn't help but tear up. Since middle school, Louis has always been kind to me, and yet I've been troubled lately by his sudden coldness. Being mistreated by Lyra, and now feeling this coldness from Louis, felt like salt being rubbed into an emotional wound. I couldn't help but cry. Louis looked surprised, but he didn't comfort me. Seeming perplexed, he paced around for a bit before sitting down next to me, who was sitting on the bed with a determined look on his face. There's something I've been meaning to ask, but haven't. What is it? Are you having an affair? I was so surprised by the sudden mention of affair that my tears stopped. I swear my heart has never strayed from Louis. Shaking my head, I say, "No, I'm not. Why would you ask something like that?" Louis then shows me a picture on his phone. The picture shows me talking to a man who has his hand on my shoulder. Both the man and I are smiling, but this is by no means a photo of infidelity. "You're mistaken. Look closely. Yeah, he's put on some weight, but that's Andy, our classmate. Don't you remember him? He was on the baseball team. This was taken when we bumped into each other after so long, and he said, 'You look well,' and patted my shoulder." Louis zooms in on the photo and says, "Really? Andy?" with a skeptical look. Frowning and looking closely at the man's face, Louis asks, "Is that really Andy? Andy is getting married soon. There's no way I'd have an affair. Why would you even suspect that?" "Well, Lyra sent me this picture saying you were cheating. She also said she saw you coming home late with Andy recently. And then she sent me this photo." "Why would you believe Lyra over me? Is that why you've been cold to me?" "Sorry, you have been coming home late and I was worried. I've become a senior at work too, so sometimes I come home late because I'm teaching my colleagues." "I see. Oh, thank goodness. I'm really sorry." Louis breathes a sigh of relief. Slightly tapping his back as a little payback for doubting me, I say, "Geez." Louis says, "Sorry," and apologizes again. From then on, Louis changed his attitude and started treating me kindly like he used to. It was good to get back to being a loving couple, but my distrust towards Lyra increased. I became convinced that Lyra wanted to kick me out of this home for some reason, so I started wondering how to expose her true colors in front of my in-laws. On another day when Lyra and I both had time off, Lyra came and demanded that I make lunch like she used to. "Why can't you be considerate? Do you know what time it is? Hurry up and make lunch," she says, but it's only 10 a.m. It feels too early for lunch to me. "Lyra, you can make something if you want. You cook on your days off, don't you?" "What? Cooking is a wife's job, isn't it? I only do chores to keep the family harmony, you know." Just as I'm getting frustrated with Lyra urging me to cook, my phone rings. Ignoring Lyra, who's been drinking since the morning, I answer the call. My mom's voice comes through, sounding urgent. "Jesse? Oh, thank goodness you picked up. Your dad's in trouble. He tripped at the front door and seems to have hurt his ankle." I can tell from my mom's voice she's really flustered, and I sense this is an emergency for my parents. "I'm coming right now, just wait," I say as I hang up the phone and start to get ready. Lyra, who told me to cook, now looks annoyed as she sees me getting ready to go out and says, "What are you doing?" "It looks like my dad got injured, so I'm going to my parents' house." "What? You're married now, aren't you? Going back to your parents' house is too lenient. If you're going home, don't bother coming back here." I couldn't take it anymore, standing in front of Lyra who was blocking my way out. Why do I have to deal with this kind of spiteful attitude? I was absolutely fed up with being treated so unfairly by Lyra. "Fine, I won't come back. I'll go to my parents' house," I state calmly, and Lyra steps aside with a pleased expression. "Don't ever come back!" Lyra cheerfully sees me off at the door, her alcohol stench unbearable. Rushing back home, I found my dad's ankle was severely bruised. Mom was visibly panicked, so I drove him to the hospital where they confirmed it was a severe sprain. Due to the condition, my dad had no choice but to use crutches, so I decided to stay with my parents for a while. I thought this was a good opportunity, especially since Lyra had told me not to come back. I informed Louis and my in-laws over the phone about my dad's injury and my strained relationship with Lyra, letting them know that I'd be staying at my parents' home for a while. My in-laws said they would talk some sense into Lyra. Louis then said, "Well, I'll come live at your family's home too." My parents get along well with Louis, so they were pleased, albeit a bit apologetic for the inconvenience. I received a text from Lyra saying, "Why would you tell my parents? Aren't you embarrassed to tattle like a child?" I just read it and ignored it. It seems Louis got a text from Lyra saying, "Aren't you coming back? Living at Jesse's family home must be tough." Louis responded, "I'll go where Jesse is," and we didn't hear from Lyra after that. My dad's recovery was slower than expected. He spent about 3 months on crutches and in a wheelchair. My dad seemed both grateful and happy for Louis's various help around the house. Just when I was feeling grateful for being married to Louis, Lyra sent a shocking message my way. "I'm bringing my boyfriend over. Since you're technically my sister-in-law, you have permission to come home for just 1 day. Be polite and greet him properly. Don't say anything unnecessary." I felt repulsed by the selfishness of her text, but the message Lyra sent to Louis was even more off-putting. Her message said, "My boyfriend is coming to greet the family, so come home, Louis. I might be getting married, but you'll always be important to me." Louis commented, "Lyra's texts are always so poetic, aren't they?" But thanks to my woman's intuition, I had a good idea of how Lyra really felt about Louis. To protect Louis and our marriage, I decided to turn this meeting into a stage for my revenge, regardless of how Lyra's boyfriend might feel. After being allowed to return to my in-laws' house after a long time, I received multiple apologies from them. They told me Lyra was going to pick up her boyfriend and that they'd make sure she apologized to me afterwards. "Oh, it's fine as long as Lyra stops being malicious. That's all I really want," I replied with a genuine smile. Plus, I'm sure that after my revenge, Lyra won't dare to be nasty to me anymore. The man Lyra brought with her seemed serious enough, but what shocked Louis and my in-laws the most was how much he looked like Louis. From the aura to the facial features, they were identical, leaving my in-laws exchanging surprised glances. It was clear that Lyra's boyfriend also noticed the resemblance. As he stood there in surprise, Lyra cheerfully said, come on in." Louis whispered to me, "Isn't that guy way too similar to me?" "I told you so, didn't I?" was my reply. I had let Louis know beforehand that I was planning some revenge. Louis had told me I didn't have to go that far, but when I explained my reasons, he seemed torn between believing me or not. However, after seeing the guy's face, Louis seemed to finally understand why I felt the need for revenge. Though the awkward expression on Louis's face showed his mixed feelings, my resolve to make Lyra learn her lesson the hard way was reaffirmed. "My name is Jackson. I'm considering marriage with Lyra. Nice to meet you all." My in-laws welcomed Jackson's polite introduction with smiles. Lyra seemed really happy and started downing drinks like there's no tomorrow. Jackson, who had seemed a little tense, started to relax more, thanks to my in-laws' warm demeanor. As we all were engaged in light conversation, a tipsy Lyra rested her head on Louis's shoulder, not Jackson's. This is fun. Louis, you must be feeling lonely, huh, knowing that I'm getting married?" "No, not at all." "You know, Jackson here looks just like Louis. That's why I thought about getting married." The resemblance between Jackson's face and Louis's had been the elephant in the room, something nobody had mentioned until now. But Lyra, probably due to being intoxicated, not only brought it up but also revealed that it was her reason for considering marriage. The atmosphere changes immediately as Lyra's words turn my in-laws' faces pale. Lyra, realizing she may have said too much, tries to laugh it off. "Just kidding!" But I didn't let this opportunity slip away. "Lyra, you can't be serious." Before my father-in-law can say anything more, I interrupt. I can't bear to let this sad tale come from my in-laws' mouths, and more importantly, I need Lyra to realize that Louis is my husband, not just a family friend. "Jackson, did you know?" I hate to spill family secrets, but Lyra and Louis are not actually blood related. My in-laws had children from previous marriages and then got remarried. "What?" He looks at Lyra in surprise. Lyra quickly puts distance between herself and Louis and glares at me. Undeterred, I take out my phone and place it on the table. I've had my suspicions for a while. Lyra has been treating me poorly, and I've wondered why. As I say this, I press the play button on the voice recorder app on my phone. What flows out are the sounds of Lyra berating me. The recording is filled with Lyra's desperate voice saying things like, "Break up with Louie," and "Leave this house." Realizing the gravity of the situation, my in-laws utter in despair, "This can't be." But I turn to Lyra, who is now biting her lip and pale as a ghost, and give her a smile. "Lyra, you've had feelings for Louie for a long time, haven't you? That's why you've been trying to drive me away." "No, that's not it. Louie is my precious younger brother." "Then why did you plan to marry Jackson because he looks like Louie?" "Well, that's... Jackson, you told me that you met Lyra in a bar, right? What was that encounter like?" Caught off guard by the sudden question, Jackson replies with a trembling voice, "We met while I was drinking at a bar. She told me she liked my face. That's how it all started." My mother-in-law lets out a sorrowful, "Oh," and starts to cry, while my father-in-law looks at Lyra with a serious expression. Lyra's biological father, my father-in-law, finally broke his silence. "Lyra, did you have feelings for Louie?" The heartfelt greeting I had prepared for Lyra's future husband was because I'd realized she had her sights set on Louie. Although Lyra herself never admitted it, her behavior over time made it increasingly obvious that she saw Louie not just as a brother, but as a man. While I had hoped it wasn't true, I grew more and more certain that the relationship was more than sibling affection. Suddenly, Lyra bursts into tears and buries her face in the table. "I couldn't help it. I've loved him ever since our parents got married when I was in elementary school, and I met Louie. There are stories like this in girls' comics, you know, where the parents remarry and their children start dating. I had always dreamed that would happen with Louie and me, and then you came along and stole him." Jackson, listening to Lyra's tearful outburst, starts to complain of a headache and says he's leaving. Lyra clung to Jackson, but her father intervened, saying he'd go apologize to Jackson later. Lyra was clearly distraught, crying uncontrollably, but neither Louie nor I could do anything to console her. "Lyra, I've always seen you as a real sister, but that's all it's ever been." With those words, Louie addressed Lyra, who was sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, her cries quieted down, but then she burst into loud, childlike sobs again. I felt some pity, but it didn't change the fact that Lyra had been mean to me. Relieved that I had gotten my revenge, and that Lyra would no longer be pursuing Louie, we left for my parents' home. Later, we learned that Lyra had been diagnosed with alcohol dependency at the hospital. She was also found to be mentally unstable and had taken time off work to isolate herself. After talking it over with my in-laws, Louie and I finally decided to move out and start our life together. My in-laws kept apologizing to me, but I told them there was no need. Love can make people do crazy things, after all. I couldn't forgive what Lyra had done, but I did feel sorry for her. I hope she can move on from her feelings for Louie and find a new direction in life. Louie and I got off to a great start living together. We rented a house close to both our parents so we could easily help them if needed. Starting this new chapter brought back the excitement we felt as newlyweds. Louie and I plan to continue being a loving couple and live happily ever after.